Almost there. We're gonna be okay. I love you. Both of you.
We love you too. Oh my god!
Now! Now! Send it down now!
Hold on!
Can't this thing move faster? Oh god. Oh god. Oh god. Oh god.
The thought of a nuclear explosion is a nightmare for most people. The destructive power of a nuclear blast is beyond imagination. In the event of a nuclear explosion, the devastation would be immense, and most people would not survive. However, if you were lucky enough to survive a nuclear explosion, the aftermath of such an event would be chaotic and dangerous. In this article, we will explore what would happen if you survived a nuclear explosion. To understand the consequences of a nuclear explosion, we need to first understand how nuclear explosions work. Nuclear explosions occur when the nucleus of an atom is split, releasing a tremendous amount of energy. This energy is released in the form of a blast wave, heat, and radiation. The energy released in a nuclear explosion can destroy buildings, kill people, and cause long-term environmental damage. The effects of a nuclear explosion can be divided into three categories: the blast wave, the thermal pulse, and the radiation. The blast wave is the shock wave that travels through the air and destroys everything in its path. The thermal pulse is the intense heat generated by the explosion, which can cause burns and ignite fires. The radiation is the energy released in the form of gamma rays, X-rays, and neutrons, which can cause damage to living cells and increase the risk of cancer. If you were lucky enough to survive a nuclear explosion, your immediate concern would be to find shelter. The blast wave from a nuclear explosion can travel at speeds of up to 600 miles per hour and can destroy buildings and other structures. If you are caught outside during a nuclear explosion, you should seek shelter immediately. The best type of shelter is a building with thick walls and a basement. If you are unable to find shelter, you should try to lie flat on the ground and cover your head with your hands. This will protect you from the blast wave, but you will still be at risk from the thermal pulse and the radiation. The thermal pulse from a nuclear explosion can cause severe burns and ignite fires. If you are caught in the open during a nuclear explosion, you should try to find shelter or cover yourself with anything that can provide protection from the heat. The radiation from a nuclear explosion can cause long-term health effects, such as cancer and genetic mutations. If you are exposed to radiation, you should seek medical attention immediately. The severity of the radiation exposure will determine the type of treatment that you need. You eat and the water that you drink. You would also need to avoid areas that are heavily contaminated with radiation. The third challenge would be to stay healthy. The long-term health effects of radiation exposure can be severe. You would need to take steps to protect yourself from the radiation, such as wearing protective clothing and using a Geiger counter to monitor radiation levels. The fourth challenge would be to find other survivors. You would not be alone in your struggle to survive. There would be other people who survived the nuclear explosion, and you would need to find them to increase your chances of survival. Rebuilding after a nuclear explosion would be a long and difficult process. The destruction caused by the explosion would be immense, and it would take years to rebuild the infrastructure of the affected area. In addition to the physical damage, there would be psychological trauma that would need to be addressed. The only way to prevent the devastating consequences of a nuclear explosion is to prevent nuclear war and ensure that nuclear weapons are never used. The prevention of nuclear war is a global responsibility that requires the cooperation of all nations to achieve a world that is free of the threat of nuclear annihilation.